I do have more Castle Crashers runs planned, including a level 1 insane mode run, level 1 insane mode run, level 1 insane mode run, level 1 insane mode run. So we previously beat Castle Crashers without any stats on normal mode, and at the end of the video I said I would try to do it on insane mode. If you didn't know, insane mode increases most enemies' health and damage by 10. So if a boss has 1000 health, they now have 10,000 health. The rules for this run are simple. We have to be insane mode without spending any skill points. We can use pets, any weapon in the game, and also glitches. I need them. So before jumping in insane mode, I went and grabbed Snoot as he would give us a +4 to our strength. I also grabbed the Man Catcher, which will give us a +5 to strength, +2 to defense, and a crit bonus. So like any Castle Crashers run, we begin in the barracks, enjoying ourselves until the Grey Knight gets knocked down the stairs. Heading outside, we can see the King's Crystal is being stolen by the evil wizard, so we are tasked with retrieving it, even though I am literally a peasant. Although the good thing is we are hitting for 18 damage right off the bat, so these barbarians should be defeated relatively quickly since we're doing a lot of damage. These are the starting enemies, right? Hold on. 500 health. That's more than the stove faces in normal mode. I then went and saved this shopkeeper from the barbarians, only for him to sell me a wooden sword. We soon came across our first boss, that being the War Machine, and normally this boss is a breeze, but on insane it has 3500 health. So the War Machine will have phases where it will shoot bombs but will stay relatively still. This is going to be our DPS phase. If you're damaging whilst in the air, the bombs will actually not be able to hit you. So by doing this, you can get a lot of DPS and be relatively safe. The War Machine's other phase involves it driving around, knocking you over. The problem is that the War Machine will summon barbarians, and as mentioned earlier, almost every enemy in the game has ×10 health and damage. This meant we could get melted pretty quickly. So after rerunning the entire area again, we did defeat the War Machine on our second try. We moved up to the second boss of the run, that being the Barbarian boss, and this is where it gets quite interesting. So on top of the ×10 rule for insane mode, some bosses will have some unique changes. So for this boss, after every attack he does, he will slightly increase in speed, meaning we have less time for damage and more attacks to avoid. And to add insult to injury, the Barbarian boss does not drop any additional gold when compared to normal mode. But with the boss defeated, that's the first of 4 princesses saved. The other 3 are going to have a long time to wait. We soon encountered our next problem for the run, that being our first beefy enemy. Strangely enough, the beefy thief does not have an increase to their health from normal to insane, but they do have an increase to their damage. There is a strat to taking out beefies, which involves jumping and hitting them 4 times, which causes them to fall over. So with this beefy only having 200 HP, it wasn't too bad to take down. Next was the Thieves' Forest, and we didn't really struggle. The forest is filled with thieves that shoot arrows, and they do a lot of damage. But as long as you can avoid these arrows, you can get through this area without much trouble. But what is trouble is one of the hardest bosses for insane mode. So the Troll Mother has 10,500 HP, although she does not attack you. The real issue is the trolls that she spawns. Each individual troll has 500 HP and hits for 80 damage. The problem is, with so many enemies, if you get caught in a crowd, well, you're pretty much dead. This means that you have to juggle doing damage to the Troll Mother and also killing the trolls. It gets worse as the Troll Mother will infinitely spawn trolls. So as you kill one, she will spawn another, and there can be a lot of them at once. This makes the Troll Mother one of the hardest bosses on insane mode. If you focus damage on the Troll Mother, the trolls will knock you down and kill you. If you kill the Troll Mother will spawn more. But wait, it gets even worse from here. When the Troll Mother reaches a quarter of her health left, she will move around when damaged. So anytime you hit her, she's going to run away. This makes it so difficult to get any consistent damage on her. So difficult in fact that it took us 33 attempts to beat, and every attempt we had to run through the entire Thieves Forest. I defeated the Troll Mother by focusing on her for her first 3/4 of health, up until the point where she started running away when taking damage. I then put all of my attention on the trolls. I constantly kept them in a juggle, moving left to right, hoping that the Troll Mother would eventually get caught in 1 or 2 of my hits. Now don't get me wrong, this took an extremely long time to do, but after 6 hours and 33 attempts, I was ready to do whatever it took to defeat this boss. Oh god! After defeating one of the hardest bosses on Insane Mode, we luckily had multiple levels that were relatively easy. This led us on to our next boss of the run. So our next boss is the Catfish, and very lucky for us, the Catfish is easy. Almost every attack the Catfish does can be blocked, meaning if we were patient and had our timing correct, we could essentially avoid all damage. On top of that, the Catfish has damage phases which are 100% safe, meaning we could do damage without having to worry about dying. So the Catfish was a bastard of endurance, and honestly, after the Troll Mother, I was happy to have a break. Moving into Tallgrass Fields, we come across our first small boss. These bosses are the same size as the player, meaning that you can juggle them. This of course makes the boss so much easier in these challenge runs. Being able to juggle enemies is one of the best ways to do damage as well as keep yourself safe. So out of all of the bosses so far, the bear boss was definitely the easiest as well as the fastest to defeat. Right after the bear boss, we get jumped by 2 beefy bears. This resulted in a death, meaning we had to go through Tallgrass Fields and defeat the bear boss for a second time. But after them 33 Troll Mother fights, a second time isn't that bad. I also swapped out Snoot for Bipolar Bear, as Polar Bear will kill any enemies that have 8% or lower health. Considering some bosses can have upwards of 20,000 health in Insane Mode, then that means Bipolar Bear could insta-kill them when they've got 2,000 health. So after Tallgrass Fields, we made it into PP Strello's cave and came across the second worst enemy in the game, the Cave Slime. Now these cute little guys don't seem that bad, and honestly at this point they're not. The problem is they have 750 HP, and every time you go to hit them they jump away, making it this extremely annoying cat and mouse chase that ends up taking a painfully long time. But after what felt like an eternity, we make it to the best boss in the game, PP Strello. Now remember earlier when I said some bosses have unique abilities in Insane Mode? Well, PP here is one of them. So good old PP will hit you for 999 damage. It doesn't matter what defense you have, you will always be one-shotted in Insane Mode. Although me and PP have a very special bond. So when I made a mistake and opened myself up for damage, PP decided not to kill me. And after that, the rest was history. PP was defeated and I will forever love him. So something new that's in Insane Mode are hidden checkpoints. So normally when you complete a level, you've completed it, you can move on. But in Insane Mode, there are hidden checkpoints that you need to get to in order to save your progress. And unfortunately, the next checkpoint from the Flowery Fields isn't until Cyclops Cave. That means in one run, we've got to beat Flowery Fields, the Groom boss fight, and the Wedding Carriage. And just for reference, it took me 2 hours and 15 minutes just to beat Flowery Fields and make it inside Wedding Crash. But going back to Flowery Fields, the bees and beekeepers were never an issue. The problem was the crazy amount of coneheads there were. Coneheads have a tendency to throw bombs, and oh boy, do they love their bombs. Just one of these bombs can do up to 1/3 of my health. And to top it all off, there's a beefy conehead right at the very end that has 1900 HP. Yeah, I died to this guy too many times. But 2 hours later, we made it inside Wedding Crash and could finally move on to the next boss. So the Groom boss fight is a very difficult fight. He only has 4000 health, but has a massive damage resistance, meaning we only do half of our normal damage. He's very fast, has great knockback resistance, and does a lot of damage. Oh, and he loves to throw bombs. And every time I failed, I had to fight the 5 waves of coneheads before the boss itself. So after 1 hour of attempts, I ended it for the night and tried it another day. So the hidden checkpoints as mentioned earlier really were a pain. If I did not reach the checkpoint, I had to redo everything. So just a quick rundown, on the next time I attempted this run, it took me an hour to get to the Wedding Crash area and 2 hours of attempts on the Groom boss fight, but once again I couldn't do it and had to call it a day. On my third day of attempting the Groom boss fight, I actually beat the Flowery Field on my first attempt. Was this the run? Was this the day I was finally going to beat the Groom? No. Things were getting desperate. Was this really going to be the end of the run? Was the Groom going to be the boss that made me quit? Honestly, yeah, the Groom probably could have, but that's when all my prayers were answered. The GOAT himself, Flaming, came in and gave me one of the best tips to beating this. So we can actually use the boomerang to permanently stun lock the Groom. This means that he cannot move and not do any damage to us. He couldn't even play his organ. So after 10 hours, the Groom boss was finally defeated. So the next boss fight is the Giant Troll, and this boss fight was like a blessing. All we had to do was sit and spam the attack button. As long as we did damage to the boss, he couldn't damage us. So after watching his health bar slowly drain, I got knocked off of the carriage and went inside the cave. And finally, after 10 plus hours, we completed the Groom section. This cave section sucks. It has 3 of the most annoying enemies in all of the game. And do you remember the slimes earlier from PP Shadow's cave? Well, they're back, and now with 1250 health each. They also had a tendency to jump on my head, making my character unable to move. This left me open to attacks from the Coneheads. And speaking of the Coneheads, they threw bombs. It's all they do. So having to dodge the bombs and also deal with the slimes and their ridiculous health, it actually took us an hour and a half just to beat this small section. So we moved up into the Cyclops Fortress, where we would eventually fight the Cyclops himself. But before that, we have to go through multiple waves of Coneheads. And it took us 1 hour and 15 minutes just to get one run that got us all the way to the Cyclops. What made this area so difficult was the Coneheads. There were multiple of them at once, meaning many bombs were being thrown, and if I got caught by a melee, then it did a lot of damage. On top of that, each individual Conehead had 1700 health, and there were so many Coneheads. So after an hour and 15 minutes of pure torture, I of course defeated the Cyclops, right? But don't worry, it only took another hour to get a second attempt. Please like and subscribe. But on our second attempt, I utilised a very funny glitch. By standing in the corner next to the lava pit, the Cyclops doesn't really know what to do and decides to just jump everywhere, making it a very easy boss fight. So after 1 week since being kidnapped, the second princess was finally saved. Next, we needed to retrieve the 2 relics in order to use the ship and cross the ocean. One can be found in Lava World and the other can be found in the Industrial Castle. Let's begin with Lava World. So despite fire demons having more health than Coneheads, it was actually a lot easier than Cyclops Fortress. That is simply down to the fact that the fire demons can be somewhat juggled. If you didn't know, juggling is one of the most important mechanics in all of Castle Crashers, and even more so for this run. There are 3 types of juggles: light juggles, medium juggles, and heavy juggles. Light juggle is the bread and butter of Castle Crashers. Most enemies in the game have this kind of juggle, and it can be chained infinitely. Medium juggles are for enemies such as the fire demons. They're a bit more heavy than a light juggle, but can still be thrown in the air, but they cannot be juggled infinitely. Last is the heavy juggle, definitely the hardest to master. These are on enemies such as the Coneheads. This is why Lava World ended up being so much easier than Cyclops Fortress. Being able to do constant damage whilst not taking any yourself makes all the difference in this run. So we were able to get all the way to the first boss without any real issues. And for the first boss of Lava World, you actually need to eat sandwiches in order to do damage. This is the first and only gimmick boss in all of the game. That means that it can only be damaged whilst being beefy. And something interesting about this boss is that it's the only boss in the game that is scaled via hits. So to defeat this boss, we only needed to hit it 7 70 times. And that was one boss down, one to go. Now the next boss is the dragon boss fight, but you are able to skip this boss entirely. By holding up my shield and shuffling left to right on this slope, I am able to enter no clip for my character. This temporarily allows you to walk out of bounds. Next I entered beefy mode, and just as it was about to run out, I went out of bounds, which allowed me to move up towards the golden wheel. You then need to hold up your shield in order to glitch back into bounds and pick up the golden wheel. But on my first attempt, I did actually fail this and was soft locked, meaning I had to quit out of the level and do it all over again. So after rerunning through all of Lava World, I gave it a second go, and this time I was able to do it. So the final relic we need is found in the Industrial Castle. Now the enemies in Industrial Castle do a lot of damage, to the point where they can almost one-shot me. But luckily, every enemy in Industrial Castle is a light juggle, making it extremely easy to do damage as well as avoid it. Well, almost every enemy. This Whopper has 2,550 health. He's only one of the few beefies in the game that can't be juggled, meaning our damage options are very limited. But if I make a single mistake, he could very easily kill me. So on my second attempt, I tried some different strategies. The bow and arrow is really effective against beefies, as it can do damage from a range and stun lock them. But our arrows did 1 damage. We could try throwing bombs, which actually did 62 damage per bomb plus fire damage. The issue is, we can only carry 9 bombs, and the brute has 2,500 health, meaning we'd have to find something to make up for the rest of the damage. That's when I realised I could use the 2 fences that spawn alongside the brute. I actually found that you could get the fences to throw bombs quite often, and with some careful timing and positioning, I was actually able to get the enemy bombs to hit the brute, and each bomb did 350 damage, meaning it only took a few bombs to kill the brute. And once the brute was down, the final 2 fences were easy. So all I had to do was defeat the industrial machine. For this boss fight, there are 7 parts that you have to destroy. There are 4 pillars in the corners that spawn electricity balls. There's a pillar in the middle that will electrify the floor, a turret on the right that can swap between a flamethrower, acid thrower, and ice thrower, and a big hand on the left. I first wanted to destroy the 5 pillars in the centre, as destroying them would give me more time to focus on the other 2 parts. So I cycled between each one as they popped up until eventually I destroyed all 5. For the turret, you could actually avoid all of the attacks by simply flying in the air and doing damage from there, meaning I could defeat the turret without having to take damage. So the final part was the hand. And this just so happens to be the most awkward and difficult part of the boss fight. So the hand attacks slightly above your head, meaning you can't really damage him while standing on the floor, and if you tried jumping in the air to do damage, you would get hit first. Normally, you would use magic to defeat this part of the boss, but we don't have that. And to make things worse, we had actually ran out of healing potions, meaning if we died here, we would have to do the industrial castle all over again. Luckily though, I found a method to do damage to the hand that was pretty consistent. By doing a light attack followed by a heavy attack, your character would do an uppercut. This allowed me to do damage in the air without having to jump. It only did 22 damage per hit, and to top it all off, I was one shot at this moment, making it an extremely intense fight. Oh, oh, let's go. Let's go. Oh my god, dude, let's go. So on my first attempt of the industrial machine, I had beaten it. Normally I would allow my chat to decide the fate of the industrial prince, but I wasn't feeling it today. He fully deserved it. And after all that, we could finally retrieve the final relic. But the game had to remind me what was coming next. So with all the relics collected, we could finally cross the ocean and see what waited us on the other side. "20 hours. It took 20 hours to beat the desert. I wish I was joking." So 3 months later and we're back. We've now beaten the challenge and I can finish this video. And what a way to start than talking about the desert. So one thing we learned in this second half of the run is just how bad RNG can be. What I mean is, any level that has RNG in it can be so much harder than non-RNG levels. That's simply because things are out of my control. No matter how good I play, I cannot predict RNG. And unfortunately for me, the desert is mostly that. Let's begin with the most obvious form of RNG. The scorpions. These little demons will randomly spawn and keep moving throughout the desert, despite, you know, there being an entire desert to explore. But no, they made it their life's goal to come and disrupt me. Anytime I was fighting enemies or trying to juggle, these little hell spawns will come and make it so much worse. The one good thing about the scorpions is that they are one shot, but it doesn't really matter since they infinitely spawn. But you know what wasn't one shot? The scarab. My new #1 hated enemy in the entire game. These things made me go insane. Oh, God. God, I hate them. I hate them. So what made them so bad? Could it be the fact that they have 2,300 health? Could it be the fact that they can only be hit 4 times before jumping away? Maybe it's the instantly killing you if you get knocked down part. I can confidently say that it was all of them put together, but there's more. The scarabs will go underground, and during this phase we can't do any damage. This just dragged on the fight, taking even longer to defeat these guys. But it's okay, there's only about 1, maybe 2 of them. 8. There are 8. Right, so we've got these busted enemies which are extremely unfair and RNG based, and there are 8 of them. Surely it cannot get worse from here. FBI, open up! Royal Guards, with 2,200 HP, being a heavy juggle, and having the ability to one-shot me. And why not? Let's just throw them in with the scarabs. What? 1 scarab not good enough for you? Here's 2. You beat the 2 scarabs? Here, have 2 Royal Guards instead. Is that not enough for you? Here's another Royal Guard. You still beat that? Here's 2 scarabs and 2 Royal Guards. Okay, rant over. How do we do this in the end? Well, for the single beetle, we simply just did a heavy attack moving left to right. Doing this prevents the scarab from being able to hit us, so it's a pretty easy technique for a single one. But things get a little bit more complicated when there are 2. So instead of staying on the ground and doing heavy attacks, I opted to jump and do 4 light attacks. This was so I could stay on the move and avoid being hit by the other beetle. But by far the best strategy was to get each beetle on a different cycle. That means when one beetle's underground, the other one is above ground. This allowed me to safely damage them one at a time without having to worry about the other one hitting me. For the third wave, we have to fight 1 scarab and 2 Royal Guards. I found it easier to take out the Royal Guards first since they did a lot more damage. They also like to throw a lot of bombs, which made it quite hard to target the scarab first. On top of that, the way that the enemy AI works is that the scarab won't attack you as long as 2 of the Royal Guards are alive. So after defeating both the enemies, we could once again just heavy juggle the beetle. The next wave is the same, but with 1 more Royal Guard. This works almost identical to the previous wave, but the extra Royal Guard becomes a roamer. So instead of just trying to attack me like the other 2 Royal Guards, he instead will fastly move around the arena, trying to get an odd hit on me when I least expect it. This made it a bit more difficult to take out the 2 Royal Guards, as I always had to worry about the roamer coming up and hitting me. And what made this even worse is when you kill one of the Royal Guards, the beetle will become aggressive, no longer staying back and letting you do damage. But this led us on to the final wave, which was by far the most difficult one. So here we have to fight 2 scarabs and 2 Royal Guards. And let me say, this part was close to impossible. With all the enemies attacking you, I couldn't even afford to stay on the ground. And what made it worse is since this is the final phase, I most of the time didn't have that many health potions for it, meaning I couldn't sacrifice any damage at all. Because remember guys, this isn't the final wave of the desert. There's still 2 boss fights to go. So what I ended up doing was flying above all the enemies. This is because the Royal Guards can throw bombs, and by flying above the enemies, I could trigger the bomb throw and try and get it to hit the beetles. But there was one problem. The Royal Guards will throw 2 types of bombs, normal bombs and magic bombs. Now the normal bombs did very little damage, but the magic bombs on the other hand did a massive 240 damage. The way I knew it was a magic bomb is that the royal guard will do a magic jump in the air, then he will throw his bomb. This is the one we want. Unfortunately though, the royal guards love to throw their regular bombs way more than the magic ones. But after 20 hours of the desert, I was ready to do whatever it takes.
Ideally we want them to kill the beetles. There we go. Another 480 damage and 240 on the beetle. Oh, huge. 240. We just want them to do as much damage as the beetles. They need to pretty much hit the beetles 10 times, but that's unrealistic. Oh, that's one dead. Oh, okay. 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 Oh, oh, oh. Oh. Oh my god. Okay, okay. No, 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 no. Okay. Oh my god.
But it's not over, because now we've got 2 boss fights to go with no healing. If I die here, I uninstall the game. And when all hope seemed lost, the behemoth answered my prayers.
Oh, oh my god. Oh, I've never wanted to eat meat more in my life.
And so with a full health bar, we were ready to take on the final boss of the desert. And so, 20 hours later, we had finally beaten the desert. For the alien ship, I didn't even go and buy health potions. I was that confident. It's mainly due to the fact that the alien ship is extremely easy even on insane mode. That's because the aliens are a one-shot, which means as long as you can just juggle, you can pretty much kill everything with no sweat. And for the escape scene, I was locked in. I was not going to die to something like this. So after making it to my escape pod, I ejected from the UFO and landed back in the desert. Come on. It's okay though. Most of the enemies here were a light juggle, so it actually wasn't too bad. Plus we got a camel.
I like camels.
So we were able to ride all our way to the sandcastle interior. Now I knew this part could pose a problem. We have to fight 3 beefies. Oh, and 4 Saracens too. This was pretty challenging, as I wasn't sure if I should focus on the Saracens first or the beefies. And through multiple attempts, I did try different methods, but nothing seemed to work. But that's when I noticed a strange crack in the wall, and that could only mean one thing. So by using this secret tunnel, I was able to trap one of the beefies behind the wall. This meant I only had to fight 1 beefy at a time, which made it way more manageable. And after defeating one of the beefies, I then had to trap the other one behind the secret tunnel too. This allowed me to fight the Saracens on their own. So with the help of our secret tunnel, we were able to move up to the sandcastle exterior. Now here wasn't too bad. The most annoying part were definitely the pillars that blocked my vision, but the enemies were manageable. The only real issue was the last wave, where we had to fight royal guards and Saracens together. This combo was extremely annoying, with the Saracen moving around in his tornado and the royal guards spamming their magic, so it made it quite hard to focus on any of the enemies. But with a lot of dodging and a bit of patience, we were able to make it to the volleyball game, which you'll be surprised to learn that I won 10-0. Yeah, I wasn't messing around. Next was the marsh, which I've heard is pretty harsh. By the looks of my dead brother here, I think I'm gonna struggle a bit. And fun fact, the skeletons at the start of the marsh have the highest melee damage in the entire game. So getting hit by one of these guys meant an instant restart. But the next section wasn't bad, as long as no one destroyed these graves. After the graves, we saw our good friend the Necromancer again, but just like Ravelworld, he left us a present. And the evil wizard must have felt bad, so he also chipped in and made the skeletons beefy. and I was so grateful for this that I decided to play with their present for 5 hours. It took 5 hours to beat these beefy skeletons. There were many things that made this fight very difficult. The small amount of space we had, the speed of the regular skeletons, and the fact that we can't fly above the enemies since the beefies could grab us. I ended up trying out many different strats. I tried staying in the corner and hitting the beefies as they came to me. I tried killing the smaller enemies first to fight the beefies on their own. I even tried flying in the corner, hoping that the regular enemies will magic jump up to me so I could take them out. And this one almost worked, but fighting 4 beefy skeletons was always going to be a problem. On top of that, every single time I died, I had to refight the 2 waves of skeletons before this, which meant every attempt was taking about 5 minutes to get to. So after about 4.5 hours, all hope seemed to be lost. But when I'd all but given up, my chat pulled through. Someone informed me about a technique called TekNAXE. TekNAXE allowed you to juggle enemies without being knocked out of the juggle. To activate this, you have to be knocked over by an enemy. You then need to spam the jump button to try and get a recovery jump. And if you are able to instantly get into a juggle before touching the ground, you stay in this state of not being able to get knocked over. This is TekNAXE. And after 5 hours, on my first attempt with TekNAXE, I was able to do it. Except that this is the 3rd wave of Marsh, and Marsh is a long level. But I am actually able to make it to where I never have to fight these skeletons again. This is done by leaving the area and then re-entering. This makes it so the skeletons do not respawn unless you exit the game. So in this session, every single time I redid the marsh, I could skip this part completely. But surely after something as difficult as that, the rest of marsh should be okay. So this is Troll Mother Part 2. However, she doesn't have anywhere near as much health as the original Troll boss fight, because we all know how that went. But there are snakies during this fight which are a medium juggle. But apart from that, these guys aren't too bad. Although I will say that I was getting a bit paranoid not having a health bar. But on our first attempt, we did defeat the Troll Mother and continue through the marsh. After fighting more snakies, I made it to the end of the level with a full health bar but no healing potions. But it was fine, since there was only 1 snaky left.
Let's go! Let's go! Oh, we did it. Okay, okay. Let's go. Wait, that is it, isn't it? Please. Please. Please? Oh my god, it isn't it? That isn't it? I thought that was it. I thought that was it. Oh my god. Oh, no.
So I thought that was the final wave and wasn't expecting 4 more snakies. And with my guard now down, I took a hit which almost one-shotted me. And let me tell you guys, this was the most tense gameplay I think I've ever done. If I got hit by anything, I would have had to redo the entirety of Marsh. And after what felt like a lifetime, this happened.
Oh, bro. Oh, my heart stopped, guys.
Thankfully, I was able to recover and finally get on to the corn boss. Now, the corn boss is a bit of a weird one. The boss fight itself is its own checkpoint, meaning every time we had to redo it, we could jump straight into it. But the corn boss sucks, having over 20,000 health and small damage windows. And the lower the corn boss's health gets, the smaller the damage windows, until the final part of the fight is just impossible to get damage on. That's why before this fight, I went and grabbed Polar Bear, who will allow me to avoid the final part of this fight. So with the corn boss having 20,000 health and us doing 18 per hit, it would mean we'd have to do over 1,000 hits on the corn boss. But thankfully, there is a glitch. If we get the corn boss to the bottom of the screen and then do a dive attack, we can do a lot of damage. And we can simply just repeat this until Polar Bear finally kills the corn. Now granted, this still took 10 minutes to do, so you can imagine just how bad this fight would have been without any glitches. Next was Medusa's lair, where we had to fight the fishmen. These guys were okay. The only thing we had to look out for were their dive attack, but that only happens when there's one left alive. They do take a long time to defeat, but their actual damage output isn't bad, until you pair them with snakies, as this combo is a nightmare. Snakies do a lot of damage, so I want to try and defeat them first, but when I'm juggling them, the fish people will stay directly underneath me, and their tracking is aggressive. This means when I land after the juggle, there's almost a guaranteed chance I will get hit. This all accumulates to the final wave, where we have to fight 3 snakies and 2 fish people, which can lead to scenarios like this.
Oh, there you are. No. Just sneak me like that.
Watching that clip even now still annoys me. And what made it worse is it took about 20 minutes just to get to this part of the run. So after many hours of attempts, I was pretty fed up. And during this live stream, I was ready to end it for the night.
I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up.
But I was conflicted because I knew I could do this. So I left it to a wheel spin.
Do we do another run? Okay.
And after landing on yes, I gave it one last go.
Okay. Oh god. 0 healing potions. Half health. 1 boss. Easy. Oh, let's go. That was such a long fight. Oh, that's such a long fight. Oh, we did it. Oh, it's over.
Next was Full Moon, which to no one's surprise was pretty bad, but not for the reasons you'd expect. Like I mentioned earlier, levels that have RNG are the worst in this run, but what made Full Moon so bad was the boulder, as I could never predict where it was going to be. So if we remove the boulder, this level is honestly pretty easy. By staying at the bottom of the screen whilst on a slope, the beefies cannot hit you, making them extremely easy to kill. But the problem was, the boulder would come down and disrupt our flow, doing damage to us and possibly breaking the glitch. So honestly, there isn't much to say for this part of Full Moon, as it's pretty easy unless you get bad RNG. But once we got past the boulder, the rest of this level was very easy. By climbing down these ladders, we can force all of the enemies to follow us. Then at the bottom of the ladder, we can hit them all without being hit ourselves. Since the stove faces cannot be juggled, we are very limited on our damage options. So ladder strat allows us to damage all the enemies at once in a very safe way. But just because it's safe doesn't mean it's fast, since the stove faces have 3,300 HP. So it actually took us 20 minutes just to beat this section alone. But after Full Moon, we did something that I never thought would happen this late into the run. We first tried Snow World. So somehow, with no stats on Insane Mode, I was able to beat a level first try. Honestly, I think the reason we were able to do this is the fact that every enemy here is a light juggle, which hasn't happened since before the desert. So if anything, this really does show just how important juggling is in Castle Crashers. So yeah, there's not really much to say here. But our next boss was the Frost King, who's going to have 50,000 health. So I'm sure we're gonna be in for a rough time.
We first tried it.
Yes, so after first trying Snow World, we also first tried the Frost King. I can't believe I'm saying this. The thing is, the Frost King does look intimidating on paper, but in practice, he's pretty easy. That's simply due to his attacks doing barely any damage, even with 0 defense. So instead of the Frost King being a difficult fight, he's more like an endurance one, because not only does he have 50,000 health, but he also has extremely short damage windows. And just to make things a little bit worse, the floor is also slippery. So with all that, this entire fight took over 30 minutes. But hey, a win's a win. So 6 months after being kidnapped, we could finally save the 3rd princess. All that there was left to do is move on to the final 4 bosses of the game. But first, we've got to defeat 12 cult minions that can almost one-shot me with magic. These guys were not fun, as not only did they waste time on every boss attempt, but they would also make me use my healing potions, something I desperately needed for these boss fights. But after fighting off the 3 waves, I finally made it to the first boss of the run with 1 healing potion. So the first boss is the painter, who is normally pretty easy, but we had one big problem. We can't tank the damage from the paintings. Normally when people fight the painter, they just let the paintings hit them to quickly do damage phases on the painter. But these paintings almost could one-shot us. And since potions was a limited resource, we couldn't afford being hit once. This meant we had to kill every single painting that the painter drew, without any magic or arrows. Now this was a big problem, as the paintings do damage by running into you. This meant I had to carefully position my character to be within melee range of the paintings, without getting too close. Which came even worse as the painter's health got lower, since he will start summoning 2 and eventually 3 at once. Luckily however, we did not have to do this for the entire fight, as when the painter gets to about 40% health, he will come down and stay there permanently. But still, this fight was rough. Some paintings were okay, and others were awful. So in the end, I decided to use Mancatcher and Snoot, since I wanted to maximise my damage for the first 60% of the painter's health. So all I had to do was damage the painter when he came down and destroy his paintings in between. We repeat this until he gets to 40% health, where he will then come down and summon all of his paintings at once. So for this part of the fight, we had to try and avoid all the paintings whilst damaging the painter, which was quite difficult since he liked to move around. But what made this bearable is the paintings are all one shot, meaning we could destroy them if we get cornered. And so 30 minutes after starting the fight, we could finally defeat the painter. And what's great about the painter for Insane mode is he will drop healing potions when you defeat him, meaning we are fully stocked, ready for the next boss. Next was the Cyclops, who isn't all that bad, although it did catch me off guard when he straight up one-shotted me. So I went and changed the Mancatcher for the Bear Club, which will now make me a 2-shot. But yeah, there's not much to say about the Cyclops. He has decent damage phases and is very easy to avoid, so it only took a few attempts until we defeated the undead Cyclops. Although I am a little salty we couldn't PP ground strap. Next was the Necromancer, where this could pose the biggest challenge of the run. Pretty much in all my challenge runs, the Necromancer is the hardest part, since you have to fight 2 waves of enemies who all have increased health. But this time, I did have a plan. Just like the Marsh, I was going to use tech to try and beat these enemies. This would allow me to juggle them without being knocked out, even by the beefies. But to initiate tech, we need to get knocked over and do a recovery jump, and with this many enemies, it was kinda challenging. But I had a bit more luck on the second run since I was able to activate tech but used all my healing potions. I didn't want to take any chances, so I stayed in the corner juggling the enemies for 5 minutes. But on this very promising run, I did actually fall out of tech, but it was not over yet, since I could use the enemy bombs to try and kill the brute, just like I did in the industrial castle. But my luck seemed to have run out since the beefy brute used the force and ended this attempt. Now this was actually my final attempt of this certain stream, meaning I had to quit out of the game. So the next time I streamed this, I did have to redo the painter and the Cyclops, which was not fun. So 1 hour later and we are back at the Necromancer, and my first run was looking promising. I tech juggled for about 10 minutes, leaving me with only the brute and 2 bomb throwers. But just like last time, the brute defeated me again. Yeah, I hate this guy. My next attempt was looking good, but I had no healing and was one shot, which didn't end well.
Oh my god, never mind.
The next attempt saw me fail to get into tech, and let's not talk about the next one. So even though we had tech, the Necromancer is still a very challenging fight. And don't forget, we have to fight through the 12 enemy cult minions before every attempt, which meant some attempts had less healing potions than others. But I just knew I could do this. Any attempt now and we were going to finally fight the Necromancer. All it takes is a little bit of patience.
Oh, no, oh, no, oh, no, no way, there's 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 no way. No, Necromancer, who do you think you are? No, genuinely though. You actually think you're gonna beat me?
So all that stood in my way was a wizard and 6 phases. Now the first phase of the evil wizard fight is pretty easy. I simply just stayed at the bottom of the screen and juggled the crystals. But the same can't be said for the second phase. The wizard will come down and have 2 different shields. A blue one for magic and a red one for melee. And since I had no stats, I couldn't do anything for the magic shield, meaning half of the fight was just spent waiting around. And the damage we could do wasn't that great, since the wizard moved around a lot and used an attack that knocked us over. But there is a cheese for this fight, which is similar to the one used in the corn boss. By getting the wizard in a very specific spot, we could dive in this corner. This would hit the wizard multiple times for a lot of damage. The only issue is, it was almost impossible to keep the wizard in the spot we needed him, meaning I'd spend most of the damage phase just doing nothing. But after 20 minutes, we did defeat the second phase and can move on to the third one. And to no one's surprise, the third phase is still easy, even with no stats on Insane. The fourth phase was honestly pretty easy too. It is like the third phase, but we can't do as much damage. And at one point, I did get knocked over and was able to activate tech, which just made this even easier. The fifth phase was the fifth phase, which led us on to the final phase of the fight. Now for this phase, the evil wizard can do different attacks, but by far the most popular one is his meteor attack. The wizard will jump in the air and summon a few meteors. Now this is the only time in the fight where he stays still, so we could easily fly up to him and get a few hits. The only issue was that the meteors that landed afterwards did a lot of damage, and at this point in the fight, we had no healing potions left. But it's okay. The evil wizard is still pretty easy, and I'm sure we'll do it without issue.
Oh my...
So 30 minutes later, and we were back in the final phase. Just pretend that didn't happen. Anyway, with one final swing of my sword, the evil wizard was defeated. So, what a crazy 6 months this has been. When I first started this challenge run, I had just hit over 1,000 subscribers, and today we now have over 16,000, which is just crazy. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to every single one of you guys. We've done so much since starting this challenge, and it's honestly sad to see it go. But with that being said, I guess there's only one question to answer. Can you beat Castle Crashers without stats on Insane mode? Yes, you can.